Brett is here with the School Sucks Project. You can go to schoolsucksproject.com and learn more and enlighten yourself with all manner of audio and even videos.
Yes.
All there.
So, I can tell you just a little bit,
Please.
a couple recommendations. Just had Ben Stone on the show. We did a two-parter.
The Bad Quaker.
Yes, The Bad Quaker. And the first show we did was called, what did we call it? Something like Making a Market for Liberty, like the idea of making liberty popular. And the second show we did was called Diminishing the Market for Government. Because right now, government is pretty darn popular.
People love it and hate it all at once.
So one of the things that came up in our discussions was, pushing a button to end the state. I think it was Murray Rothbard who introduced that idea. And Ben had a really great, 3 or 4 minute monologue. So I turned it into a video, and I would love for people to go and watch it. It's called Push a Button and Stop Government.
Would you do it?
Yeah, well, what are you asking me?
Sure.
No. Would you?
Because people would just be too shocked. What would be your reasoning for not pushing the button to end the state?
Well, first of all, people have to want to live in a voluntary world.
It's true.
And if they don't, and there's also, a lot of people who, if a button was pushed and we woke up in that world tomorrow, I forget who said it, but government would be up and running again in no time because we have major philosophical corruptions that we're still dealing with that go back a long time. And I really believe that that's something that we have to evolve out of. And part of it is recognizing the impact of state schooling. Part of it is, recognizing the impact of bad parenting. There's lots of reasons why we live in the world we live in today, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's a complicated web to get out of. And pushing a button would, I think, make a lot of things worse. And it also wouldn't be a very good advertisement. Like if we woke up on March 1st and lived in pure anarchy after the world we live in today, it wouldn't be a very good advertisement for anarchy. On March 2nd, not too many people would be very excited about it, I don't think.
I think also there are some Gordian knots the government's created.
Yes.
And that make it very sort of difficult to extricate oneself from. So that's the other side of that coin.
Okay, so obviously it's a ridiculous what-if scenario because that button's never going to exist, but It's still fun to think about it. And I agree with the things you're saying, Brett, that people have to be ready for the idea of ending the state in order for the state to ever end, or otherwise they'll just create it all over again and so on and so forth. So what we have today is ultimately a manifestation of what people believe, and people believe in the state today. And if people are continuing to believe in the state and then all of a sudden the state is wiped out, then you're right. I think they would recreate it. However, if we could have such a button, you'd really have to ask, well, what would pushing it mean? Would pushing the button mean that all of the people who are in prison for victimless crimes and victim crimes, would they be released? Would they have to stay in the prisons and the guards just all disappear? Like, what would that look like? Because if I could free a bunch of victimless criminals from prison cells and end the wars in the other countries around the world, I'd go ahead and push that damn button and let the chips fall where they may.
Speaking as the only person who's spent any good time thinking about what would happen to prisoners if you saw some kind of socioeconomic collapse in this country, we used to play this little conundrum in prison, and I think that you'd pretty quickly see prison guards going through the prisons and shooting all the inmates.
Yeah, well, I think that...
Wait, what? And what was the circumstance that you think that would happen? If the state disappeared?
If the state collapsed, if for whatever reason...
No, you're pushing a button and the state's going away. So wouldn't that mean the prisons would just disappear as well?
I don't know what you're referring to precisely.
With the guards, and you mean the people who populate government? The people? Because government is people. Right. Government is two things. It's a belief.
The state is people. It's a belief.
It's a belief, and it's, people animated by that belief. So do all those things go away? I mean, it's an interesting question. If you push the button and the belief in government and the idea that might makes right and force solves problems disappears tomorrow, we might be okay.
Yeah.
But that's not how it's going to be. I mean, I think I see the state as a symptom of things that human beings haven't figured out how to get right yet.
Agreed.
I mean, we see
But it's also momentum. It's momentum of a governmental system that's been around since the agrarian revolution, with the creation of sort of a master-slave mentality at that point. And there probably was slavery before that, but slaves weren't nearly as useful.
And It's got a lot of momentum. So it's very, very hard to slow it down and to stop it and to reverse its direction, which, of course, is what a lot of liberty-minded people are trying to do through the system, which is a very frustrating and difficult process, not to mention expensive and time-consuming. So if you could press a button and start it all from zero again, I'd still press the damn button, just because
I know you would, buddy.
Okay, yeah, people are going to rebuild the state, but at least they'd be rebuilding from zero rather than this behemoth that we currently have.
This is the problem with the button, Brett, is that some jackass is going to push it. And, like somebody who doesn't put as much time and energy into thinking about it. While I'm saying, whoa, Ian, let me talk to you. Let me talk to you. Some liberty activist, going to run around Ian and push the button. Just as I'm trying to explain whatever the consequences are.
Yeah, it was Rothbard who said, I would blister my finger pushing the button.
Really?
Right. So, I mean, I guess he would stand there, and when it starts up again the next day, he'd push it again. And he'd just do this over and over. Every day he'd wake up and push the button.
If he could do that, that would be really interesting, because it would essentially force people into creating alternatives to the coercive institutions. But now we're getting off into this ridiculous. I mean, we've already gone far afield in this.
The question itself, the question itself, it's an interesting philosophical what-if question.
Yeah.
But it's terribly unrealistic, of course.
Of course.
So,
unfortunately, we're stuck without the button, and we are going to have to influence people. People are going to have to change their minds about what the state is and whether or not they support it.
The button is education, and you've got to talk to people about these ideas over and over again.
And you have to make these ideas cool. People are working hard right now to make government pretty cool. You got Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about taking our tax money and going to Mars.
Yeah, he's got places to go.
Yeah, Obama is cool. States are legalizing marijuana. People are getting health care. Like, government is thumbs up for a lot of people right now. So it's becoming this cool thing. And, I mean, I was being encouraged to go work for the government right out of college. People are like, you're crazy if you're not going to work for the government. The benefits are sweet. You get way overpaid.
So you're looking at teaching?
Well, I was looking at a couple of things, maybe social services, because I was working in a private school. And that actually reminds me, I worked in this private school. It was a boarding school for quote-unquote juvenile delinquents. Mark and I think, have had different experiences, but what those experiences have in common is pushing the button and making the state disappear. I think we've spent time around people that make us a little hesitant.
Oh, yeah. Well, I entered prison as an anarcho-communist. Remember this.
Yeah.
I left a Republican. I mean, it was no thanks.
Yeah, and I saw, the inner city and the young product of the inner city of places like Baltimore and Washington, D.C., and, New York City and Providence, Rhode Island. And the state is so much a part of people there, and I mean minorities, who... If you look at the history of this country over the last couple hundred years, the state never should have been able to get jammed into their psyche the way it is. They should have always rejected it. And they reject, this Disney version of history about, heroes like Abraham Lincoln and George Washington. They know that's BS, but through, the inner city and the government aid, the welfare system, HUD, the state has been put into them.
Yeah,
because, people forget. Some people are too young to know, and others forget.
At the same time, many in the inner city do know how to reject the police.
Absolutely.
They know better than to talk to them.
But, my theory is that in the mid-1960s, the ghettos, the inner cities, especially in minority areas, they were getting ready to explode, and there was going to be a revolution. But Lyndon Johnson, clever gangster that he was, figured out a way to buy a lot of people off. With the Great Society and the welfare programs, and it seemed to work.
Don't miss more of Brett. He's going to continue on the show here tonight, but you can get a lot more of him over at schoolsucksproject.com, where they initially had discussed with the Bad Quaker the button-pushing situation.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Bad Quaker's a really bright guy, so I imagine that was an interesting conversation. Coming up, we'll give you a solution to some of these problems, because, we do have to convince people that the state's a terrible idea. And I think that one of the keys to convincing people is concentrating our activism in one area. Of course, that's the Free State Project. We'll tell you about the Porcupine Freedom Festival coming up here. Also, Operation Choke Point. It's the Department of Justice attack on porn stars. We'll tell you what's going on the way here on Free Talk Live. Hour 2's next.